understanding. Hebrews chapter 1, you can go there real quick, but I'm going to read in Luke chapter 17 real quick before we go into it. Just go to Hebrews chapter 1. You guys know it. But I was just going to use Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. But then I was reading, and I love the Bible plan because you just get some fresh stuff every day. I was reading in Luke 17, verse 5 and 6, in the NLT version. It said, the apostles said to the Lord. The apostles said to the Lord. That's good already, because right here at this moment, they weren't, I guess you could say, told that they were an apostle yet, but God speaks things before they even are. So when God sees you, he doesn't see you for what you are. He sees you for who he created you to be. That's why he doesn't call you by your mistake or by your sin. He calls you by who he's made you to be. The apostles, who has God created you to be? I love what they said. It said, show us how to increase our faith. The Lord said, if you had faith as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, may you uproot and be planted in the sea, and it will obey you. That's good news right there. Now let's go to Hebrews chapter 11. I want to read verse 1 in two different versions. It says, now faith is the confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. That's the very essence of our faith right here. If you were to put your faith in a nutshell, why we do what we do, this is it right here, where our belief comes from. I love the ESV right here. It says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. I want to speak on I want great faith. How many of you guys want great faith here today? Tell your neighbor, I want great faith, and you could be seated here today. I love right there that it said that they would have the conviction of things not seen. When I think of faith, I think conviction. In other words, you can't convince me otherwise. When I was a little kid, I don't know about you guys, when you guys were little kids, or the one that's right there, I hear you. I know that kid got some dreams. Me, growing up, I was absolutely convinced you could not change my mind. There was a couple things you couldn't change my mind on, but I'll go to the other one. One, I thought I was going to be a professional athlete my entire life. As you could tell right now, I'm not in the shape to do so. Someone tried to compliment me earlier saying I look fit, but I said it's just the sushi. It's just a lot of sushi, a lot of carbs. All right, it's just me. All right, I like to talk to myself. I'll laugh at my own jokes, you know? It's okay. You couldn't convince me growing up that I was going to be a professional athlete. I used to go in my parents' backyard, and I would throw a ball up to myself. It was baseball, which was my favorite sport. I'd throw the ball up to myself, and I would hit it and act like I just hit that thing, but I just hit it into the neighbor's yard. And I would jump the fence, go get it, come back. See, he's dreaming right there. I see it. He's dreaming. I love it. I think we all look back, and there were some certain things in our life that we were convinced that you couldn't change our mind on. There are some people that are convinced of some facts that when you're actually presented with the real facts, you're like, nope, I'm convinced. It's so funny. I think you see that the most, and I'm not saying anything specific, but you can see that in politics. People are like, no, I'm convinced that this is what the government does. And you're like, oh, no, I just saw this bill get signed right here in Parliament, like they look at right here. And like, no. Right? You just can't be convinced. There's certain things that is like a conviction that you can't be convinced otherwise. And I love that in the Bible, when you start to look at men and women in Hebrews, they were men and women that could not be convinced of otherwise. Faith is simply just belief. Faith is trust. Faith is not so much in what, but who. When I think of faith, I think of being fully persuaded of truth. There's a certain truth that fully persuades us and makes us believe. Faith is believing in a God, and not just in God, but believing in what God says about us. See, I think there's that, like we know the things of God, but there's also moments we don't believe the things of God. Like we don't believe we could be set free, but we know it. See, I think that's what kind of goes from the little faith to big faith or great faith. See, little faith isn't saying like, man, there's a level, but it's because there's certain truths that we don't believe yet. about God and what he says about us and what he says about his church and what he says about himself. We believe that God forgives, but sometimes, or we know he forgives, but sometimes we can't receive that. See, there's a difference of knowing and believing. See, faith in the beginning of knowing that's that little faith. Sometimes we get to learn things and we get to know things, but going into great faith, that's when we transition from knowing to believing. See, I thank God that when our founder, Pastor Sonny, when our ministry was pioneered, that he would there's moments you would hear that he would preach his church full of drug addicts and broken people, and they weren't very the brightest people in the room. When I looked at myself, I wasn't the brightest person in the room when I walked into church the first time, but he would preach that some of you, God's going to raise you up and send you out to be churches and pastors. God's going to raise you up to be an evangelist. God's going to do this, and God's going to do that, and then he would walk off the stage and think to himself, what did I just say? See, our ministry, I heard stories of our founder when he would want to give up in the very beginning of Victory Outreach being started, and him sitting on a curve and thinking, I'm just going to give this all up and I don't want to do this no more. And then all of a sudden going to a conference and God giving him a word that took him from knowing to believing God could do it. See, it's one thing to know he has promises to you. It's one thing to know he can set you free. It's one thing to know that he loves you. It's one thing to know he's called you. It's one thing to know he could do miracle, but it's another thing to believe the promises that he has. It's another thing to believe that he's called you by name. It's another thing to believe he can work miracles. I wonder if I'm talking to some people that are going to go from little faith to great faith. See, but when we go from knowing to believing, that's when conviction sets in. That's when we can't be convinced otherwise. Because it's in us. We can't even imagine life without it. See, if we live off what we see, there's no blessing in it. Where's faith in what we see? We're like, man, I guess that's his. When we open up our ING accounts, like, that's just the way it is. But what we didn't see behind it was a spending problem that keeps draining that account. When we look at things we've been praying for and we see it don't look good, I don't know about you, but there's some things that don't match up with the prayers that I'm believing for. Am I the only one that has some things I'm believing God for? And when I look at it, it's like it doesn't look like it's changing very much. But then when I look at the God that I serve and his nature and his character, I realize that through faith that he could do it. See, there's no blessing in seeing things for what they are. But the blessing is when you can see it through eyes of faith. See, 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, for we live by faith and not by. We live by faith and not by. Isn't it hard to live like that, though? Isn't it so much harder? Man, that's a good one. We could tell somebody that real good. We could know that one real good, but it's hard to believe that one real good. See, when you look by faith, you'll see it through the words of God. You'll look at it through the lens of if God is who he says he is and he's not a man that he should lie, then I could trust in the word that I'm reading. When I read that me and my house will serve the Lord, I could believe because God is not a man that he should lie. When we look as a team and we look as a church at what we could be, we saw it through eyes of faith. It took faith when we were in Panama to walk into this room. We didn't see much more than that club. And look at how God has blessed us. So I want to say great faith. In Matthew 8 and Matthew 15 is the two times that the Bible mentions great faith. See, in Matthew chapter 8 was when the centurion man, he went to Jesus for healing for his son. He was a man of high ranking, a man of influence, and a man that definitely did not want to look weak. Yet he was a man that went to God, and he said, you just need to say the word. I just believe your word and you'll do it. And he says, you will have great faith. Then in Matthew chapter 15, you'll see the Canaanite woman had went with the same need. God, my child is sick. She was desperate. They tried to shoo her away, and she kept persisting. She kept persisting. I wonder if there's some women that know how to keep persisting for their family. I wonder if there's some people that know how to keep going and pushing forward. Some of you are here because you don't know anything else but not to quit. And you just know, if I just keep showing up, if I just keep being persistent, I know that God will come through eventually. This woman said, even if you just give me the crumbs off the table. And the Lord looked and said, this woman has great faith. What's important about these two people is they were not Jewish people. So they were people that weren't even supposed to believe, but had more belief than the children of God. See, when you look at the word great faith, I promise this is good. This is going to be good here today. I felt so strong about this one. See, great faith, I heard a message from Pastor Ryan, our international young adult and student leader, and he started preaching about greater things. When you look at the word greater in these two words, and you begin to look at them in the Greek, greater translates into megas. The same word that translates into mega. I think the Lord's looking for some people here today saying, I don't want you just to have a little faith. If you get faith that just gets you by, that's good. But I want to take you to mega faith here this afternoon. I want you to have a big faith, a large faith, just to believe not just in him and what he could do, but what he could do through you. I believe that we have a God here today that wants to do mega things here, and he's looking for some people in the room that have a mega faith to say, I believe God could do greater things in my life. I believe God could do greater things in my workplace, in my community. I believe I serve a God that could do greater things in my life, in my family's life. Is there someone here today that says, hey, I serve a God of greater things, and if you could do greater things around me, then God, you could do greater things in me, and not just in me, but through me. When we look at our church, we have a big faith. We're believing for greater things here in this house. That's why we're doing the things that we're doing, because we believe in a God of greater things. I don't know about you, but I read scriptures like that, and I begin to study, begin to fuel my faith. Say, I know God's done some great things in my life, but he wants to do some greater things in my life. Someone say greater faith. Great faith. Great faith. I love that in Hebrews 6, it says, and without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and he rewards those. Like, he doesn't just say, thank you for believing me, but he rewards those. He's like, man, I'm so honored that you would believe in me, so I will reward you, those who earnestly seek him. See, it's a journey of faith, and as we continue to follow him, I think there's one thing that pleases him that we see in the Bible, and that is faith. I want to just talk about a few things on great faith. One is we see great faith in the who and not the what. Someone say, who? Who? Have you ever been in a conversation with someone, you're like, yeah, so-and-so, and they say the name, you're like, who? Who? All right, so Jesus, what was happening in Mark, I want to read a verse. In Mark 11, Jesus was walking by, he saw a fig tree, and it didn't have fruit in its season, so he cursed it, and he continued on. So as he was coming to the end of his ministry, and as he came back, the disciples that were with him were amazed that when they came by that it had withered. And Jesus responded with this, have faith in God. Have faith in God. Tell your neighbor, have faith in God. If we're not careful, sometimes we could put our faith in the results of God instead of the person of God. I love in Exodus 33 because you'll see Moses, the Lord was just tired of have you ever been tired of somebody sometimes? I got mad at my dogs. Well, I get mad at her sometimes, but I love her so much. I said the dog in front of Julie, my wife, the other day, and she's like, that's still the baby. I said, okay, I'm sorry. So anyways, there was a couple times where, and this is not on her, it's on me, all right? It's not you, it's me, all right? One of those things. So my baby sleeps through the night now, which is like the greatest thing on earth. That's a miracle. See, God does miracles, greater faith. So anyways, there was a couple nights where she would wake up, and I would just wake up to hear like her crying, and there's sometimes it's weird, like you learn your dogs cry, if that makes sense. All right, nope. All right, so I'm going to just explain it. Somehow I learned my dogs cry. So I know when she's just wanting to just like run around at 2 in the morning, and I know when she has to use the bathroom at 2 in the morning. It's weird, but you can't sleep because she's just crying. So I get up, open the door, let her out, and then she'll walk out, smell, and then just go back inside. I'm like, yo, this gets me. I wouldn't do it. I'm just kidding. I love her. I scratch her. I give her more snacks than she needs. She has to lose weight so she could get on the flight to come back over here. She's good. She's loved. I promise you that. I'm that dog parent that gives her food off my plate. So anyways, I get mad at him. Sometimes I get like, man, Zoe, could you just not do that at 2 in the morning? I'm tempted to leave her downstairs to sleep on a dog bed down there. But then Julie's like, where's the dog? So I bring her back up, put her on the bed. Exodus 33 is one of those moments. Moses is talking to the Lord. And when he's talking to the Lord finally tells him, hey, I'm going to just give you the promise. I'm going to take you to the promised land, but I'm not going to be there. And Moses is sitting there, and he got the instructions. He gave him, you're going to read it this week. I'm giving you a lot of Bible today because I want you to take time to just study it today or throughout this week, because that's what fuels our faith to great faith. Exodus 33, he starts going through and telling him that he's not going to be with him. Moses, I want to just read the whole passage if I could just for a moment. Starting in verse 12, it says, Moses said to the Lord, you have been telling me to lead these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways so that I may know you and continue to find favor with you. That's a good prayer right there, if you want to get a prayer right there. Remember that this nation is your people. The Lord replied, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Then Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, I will do this very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you and I know you by name. See, Moses got to a point where he was more concerned with the who than the what. He loved God not because of what he was going to do and even what he promised. I was about to fight that thing right there. What he was going to do for him. I'll get him. If it goes one more time, these hands are fast. It was getting good, Pastor Philip. See, he got to the point where he started to recognize that what good is the promised land if I focus on the promise so much that I'm not concerned with who gave the promise? What good is the miracle if God's presence isn't with me? What good is the open door and the good job promotion that we've been working so hard for if God's not in it? What good is all these great things if they pull us from the presence of God? I'd rather have not that miracle than just be simply in the presence of God and get content with just being in moments saying, God, even if you don't do it, I still will serve you, like Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. When they were there about to be thrown in the fiery furnace, they said, even if he doesn't do it, I will still declare he is good. It's easy to say God is good when it's good, but it's hard to say God is good when it's bad. Like it's easy to show up on a Sunday when it's good. It is hard to show up when it don't feel very good, when emotions are low, when we feel that things aren't happening the way that we wanted or on our time clock. But we got to remind ourselves to look at the who and not the what he could do. Because when you focus on the who, favor follows. He said, not only will I be with you, but my favor will follow you. I hope I'm unlocking something here today, and I hope something's like a light bulb turning on with the area of faith, because faith is not what he could do, it's who could do it. And when you focus on who could do it, then you know the results will take care of themselves, because God works everything out for the good of those who love him, not those who work extremely hard for it, those who, what? Not those who work their way into it, but those who. The who, not the what. Great faith. When you know who you serve, you'll know what he could do.
Yes. Amen.
It's almost like a kid. Like I think every parent, if we could be honest, when I was growing up, my parents would give me like catalogs when we still had those things. You know, like the mail ones that they send. And it was like all the toy stores, and they'd be like, circle what you want. And I would circle those things like, my parents are going to come through on at least 2 of these things. At least one. I would look at it, I'm like, they're going to get at least one. I would go back to the catalog and look at it. And then when it disappeared, I knew Santa was working it out. The who, not the what. Why was Moses able to have a faith like that? Because he knew the God he served. He knew he was a loving God. Ephesians 2:4-5, he's a loving God. He is a just God. You'll see that in Acts 17. You'll see he's a holy God. You'll see he is a God who shows compassion. You see through the life and ministry of Jesus that he takes care of those. He listens. He's not a God that he should lie. He's near to the brokenhearted. We know when you know who your God is and you're convinced, and there's a conviction of who God is in your life. No matter what he does, you know who he is. And when you know who it is, you know that when you even get in trouble by a parent that loves you or someone that loves you, you're able to forgive and let it go, because you know that in all reality, they just are doing what's best for you. But when that truth, like when we know that but don't believe that, that's where little faith will kick in. There's some people here today, it's hard for us to overcome because we have not recognized that we serve a God that overcomes by faith. We've accepted certain sin in our life. It's our pet, it's our Zoe. We've accepted it, we've embraced it. I'm just going to always think like that. I'm always just going to talk about people. I'm always going to struggle with that. I'm always going to just be like that. I can't get myself out of this. But when I look at 1 John 5:4, it says, for everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world. When he said this is the victory, he's saying this victory, Jesus, that has overcome the world, even in our faith. See, we become overcomers through faith. Why? Because we serve a God that overcame the world. That's just the character of who God is. See, I love that God doesn't just have all these things where he's like a stoic being. He's also a relational person. He's someone that desires for us to come to him in faith. And I love in Hebrews 4:16, it says, let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, with conviction, with belief, with trust, like as if God has given you the catalog to circle the things you need, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. In Luke 18, I love that I was just reading the other day. Luke 15, Jesus begins to give a parable, tell a story. And he talks about a Pharisee that went to God in prayer, and he said, thank God that I'm not like these people. Thank God I'm not a robber like them. Thank God I'm not a thief. Thank God I'm not in this sin. Thank God. God, I thank you that I fast and that I tithe. Then it said on the other side, there was another man that came before God. It said that he couldn't even keep his head up. He kept his head down. It said he didn't look towards the heaven. It said he looked down. And when he looked down, he beat his chest. And he said this prayer, and I love this prayer. He said, God, have mercy on me. I'm a sinner. And then he went on to say, whose prayer did I answer? Sometimes we don't need to go to God strong. We can go to God in humility, boldly, knowing that he's able to do things the way he could do it. Not only great faith in the who and the what and not the what, but great faith steps out and does not hide out. Matthew 14:27, a lot of Bible. I know I've been reading a lot lately. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. This is when Peter went on the boat. He sent all the disciples on the boat. He sent them all out and said, I'll join you later. They were probably thinking, all right, I'll see you. I don't know where you're going to get a boat from, but I'll see you soon. They probably got off the shores, no other boats. They're the last boat off the pier. They go off the dock, and they go off. As they go off, they look out into the night, and they see like a ghost walking, they said. They thought it was a ghost walking. And when that ghost was walking, they thought it was a ghost. The disciples, as he's approaching, said, but Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. There's some people in this season of your life that you are places that it feels dark and you can't see nothing around you. And the Lord's word to you is take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down on the boat and walked on water and came towards Jesus. See, I think great faith gets us in the boat. Or faith gets us in the boat. But great faith gets us out of the boat. There are some people here today that you've been living in the boat too long. The conference, you're in a comfortable faith, I like to call it. Like you're comfortable, you got your routine down right now. We got our calendars marked up exactly. We squared them away. Like I study at 2 p.m. every day. I put the kids to sleep at this time every day. I wake up like this every day. I do this every day. You got to square it up, and no one can speak into that. God, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about like there's no room. There's no space for God to do something fresh because we're so scheduled down. We got a good, comfortable faith. Don't we all search for comfort? I love comfort. I eat for comfort. Come on, somebody. We do things to accommodate a comfortable life. And will bad things happen with a comfortable faith? No. Will we see great things? No. We'll see great things around us, but not great things in us. There's some of you, God's been calling you out of the boat, and we stayed in the boat. The Lord's saying, man, I just wish you could trust me with your finances. And if you step out of the boat of having everything kind of locked in like that with no room for me to speak into that or to trust me with that, then I can't do nothing with that. There's some people that you have squared up your time so much that you cannot be involved in the house of God. You can't get into a connect group. And you start to look, I start looking at those connecting to our connect groups. I'm seeing people that are stepping into greater things. I see people that are doing greater things. And I see people that are lit up. I see people that are being encouraged by community. I see people that serve in this house that have a fresh joy on them. I thank God when I was listening to the music team, I thank God for the music team because there's people we can lean into. And I thank God for faithfulness. I thank God for people that get out of the boat and said, man, I know I could just do it like this, but I'm going to open it up so I can continue to use my gift. I wonder how many people are sitting in the boat of comfort right now. Knowing that you have a gift and a time and a service in the house of God. We're creating space, saying if there's some people right now that want to get out of the boat with us, and we keep walking together into great faith. See, this is the part that challenges us because faith is never comfortable. Faith has tension. It's not faith if it's easy. Tension. Pastor Joe calls it from one of our elders, he calls it divine tension. Where you live with the pressure of, man, God, you got to come through. That tension of stepping in faith. We're stepping out as faith as a church, and we're facilitating what we're facilitating because, man, we want to live in that tension of we love our community, we love family. We also believe that there's room for more family. We believe that there's room for more people to come into the house of God. We believe that there's going to be more gifting. I believe that there's going to be people that step out of the boat of translation. We could translate in Ukrainian. We could translate in Dutch. We could translate in Spanish. We could translate in Italian. We could translate in French. We could translate in all these languages. Why? Because we serve a God that's able to do it. And when God begins to open up needs, he doesn't open them up with question marks saying, I wonder who's going to do it. It's because the gift's in the house already. You know you got a gift in this for this house? Tell the person next to you, you got a gift. Nah, if someone's quiet, tell the person over you, tell them you got a gift. You got a gift. See, faith is not still, it is active. Faith is not still, it is active. See, faith will keep you from just surviving and move you into a place of activity. The two with great faith that we talked about in Matthew 8 and Matthew chapter 15, they were people that went after God. Like Jesus didn't go to them. I know that's the Jesus we like to hear, that he goes to us, and he does. And there's also moments where we got to go to him. There's moments we got to walk out the boat. He doesn't just come to the boat. He'll walk so far and say, can you come meet me meet me halfway. Active faith. Active faith. James 2, it's a mouthful when you begin to read about it, when it starts talking about faith, because everyone talks about, it's just by faith. It's by, I hope so. Sometimes we can have a lazy faith. What do I mean by a lazy faith? We have a faith that, like, I hope you, like Winnie the Pooh, or what is Eeyore? Oh, I hope it happens. I just hope. Oh, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But this is the kind of faith that challenges us. James chapter 2, he goes on the topic of faith and works. See, in verse 17, I wish I could have enough time to read the whole thing. But let's just read in verse 17. It says, in the same way, faith by itself is not accompanied by action is dead. See, it's not, I don't want you just to believe in me. I want you to work with me. Because when your faith is in not the what and the who, you can't help but want to do God's work, like good works follow you. You can't help but, because he begins to talk about, how could you say you have faith, but you walk by someone in need, and you say, man, I hope it gets better, and walk away with the jacket on your back? Starts talking about convicting, challenging our faith as Christians. He's challenging the church right there, saying, listen, I don't want you to just say you believe because it's good to say you believe. I want you to have some action behind that belief that proves, that solidifies, that demonstrates faith in me. If I could have the music team come up here this afternoon. Still in the same thread, same part. I think the temptation is to stay in the boat. The temptation for us is to be comfortable. My temptation is comfort. I think we could all be honest. There's times where we lean on comfort. We have an honest church here today. I can be honest. I'll throw up both hands. Sometimes we preference comfort. And that if we give ourselves too long to comfort, our faith that was great will turn to lazy. See, there's a parable with the talents, and the one when the Lord gave 10 talents, 5 talents, and 1 talent. See, he left them in charge, and when he had left them in charge, he came back, and he began to go through the one that had 10, and he doubled it. Went to the next one, and he doubled it. And he went to the third, and he hid it. Don't step out. Step out, don't hide out. He hid it out of fear. See, when I look at moments of my life when I've reserved myself from God and what he wants to do in my life, I think I could always tie it back to there's just some fear in there. Complex, could I do it? Am I crazy for trying this? What if I fail? What if it doesn't work out the way that I said it's going to work out? What if, and I'm going to tie all the times of hesitation in my life to fear. I should have said that, but I didn't. I wanted to have that conversation with that person, but I didn't. There's some people that the Lord's been calling you to forgive people, but the fear of humbling ourselves, and how are they going to respond? But they're the ones that actually did it. Why do I have to forgive? And you've been just wrestling and fear. You ever felt like that before? Just pulled down, weighed down to hide. When the Lord found Gideon, where did he find him? Hiding. When Elijah the prophet experienced fear, he ran for his life. But when you look at the Bible, you look at everyone that gained the most, lost the most. All those who gained the most, lost the most. What do I mean? I'm not talking about they lost it. There's some things that we can't hold on to as we step out the boat. You can't carry things on the boat that you carried in the boat. Certain attitudes walk off when you step out the boat. Certain beliefs that bog us down have to stay in the boat because there's no room for it. It'll weigh us down in the waters. The Lord's knocking at some people here today and calling and saying, hey, it is I. Take courage. Step out of the boat with me. And lastly, great faith is growing and not decreasing. Romans 12:3 says, for by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. You know that there's a certain amount of faith that God's assigned to your life. No one is better because of that measure. But if we could be honest, are we stepping to the fullness of that measure? Like, if we're to be honest with ourselves, is that full measure in use right now? As you could tell, and I always talk about, I'm not a fitness guy. I want to be. I try, I do. Pastor Philip, I try. But okay, so I was reading, you know that if you go 10 days, and I've gone a lot more than 10 days without going to the gym. How many of you guys go to the gym every week or day? Or who's my consistent gym goers or fitness people? I see a couple of hands. All right, well, we're a church. We're in this journey together then. All right, we got to encourage each other. If you go 10 days without going to the gym, it says that your muscles will decrease up to 11%. Muscles that you don't use will decrease. When we don't use the measure of faith he's given us, if physically our muscles decrease, our faith, I would imagine, decreases as well. We go days without prayer. We go weeks without going to church. We go time after time without community, and we go into isolation, and we go time after time after time without the word, time without his presence, time without community, time without service. Eventually, you know how hard it is for myself to get back in the gym? I'm talking about this as I moved here, Pastor Philip. It's hard when we step out of that alignment of building our faith. Sometimes I could imagine how hard it is to get back in it. Some of us been wrestling with just wanting to do it. It's not that you can't, it's that it's hard to imagine yourself doing it. It doesn't feel good living in decrease. The prayer that he had was, Lord, the disciples, the apostles, they said, Lord, teach us to increase our faith. I think that is really the prayer of every believer. If we're honest, we say, God, help me believe, help me trust you, help me stay the course, help me stay locked in on the journey. Every day I wake up saying, Lord, it has to be you. Lord, I want to live a life that pleases you. And when I think about it, it's saying, Lord, I want to live a life that has faith in you when I feel it, when I don't feel it, when it's good, when it's bad, when the prayers are being answered or you're putting prayer on delay. God, I want to have great faith that you can do it, that God, you are who you say you are, and I can
trust in your character. I can trust that you're a good God. You're a loving God. You're a forgiving God. And that, Lord, you called us to this city to break open and establish a base that will touch the world. I don't know about you, but my prayer has been saying, God, give me great faith. I'm a product of a man that spoke faith over me. I thank God for leaders that have spoke faith over me. How does faith grow? It says faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God. What have you been hearing lately? Have you been hearing your doubts? Have you been hearing that bad self-talk? Or have you been locked in and reading the word of God and talking faith with people and talking the call of God with people and talking how God could work miracles with people? Faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God. I'm a product of people that have sown seeds of God's word on my life. He's going to do it. You know why? Because he said that's who he is. That's who he is. A God that hears you, a God that's with you, a God that never forsakes you, a God that stands beside you, is closer than a brother in a time of need. He's that kind of God. Like, he's that good. Like, he's good when we're not good. He's faithful when we're not faithful. He's a good God. How could we have a great faith? It's not because we believe that we could do it, but we believe he could do it. I don't know about you, but I want to step into a faith season. I want to step into a time where my faith goes to greater heights and it increases. And I can say to things, Lord, it looks like this, but can you work a miracle in it? There's some of you here this afternoon, your faith has been on that point of it needs to get to great faith again. Some of us, simply our prayer is, God, increase our faith. Help me go from knowing to believing. And that's what I want to pray for you here today.